Hello, everyone, and welcome on this Wednesday, April 29th, to the latest version of the Steier Group Stewardship Development and Fundraising Forum. I'm Sean McMahon, President of Client Services for the Steier Group, and today's session is what we're calling donor diagnosis. We've spent a lot of the previous weeks talking about how to approach donors. Is it appropriate? What's the best method? Should you be doing it at all? Well, today we can actually ask the donors themselves. We have a panel that we've assembled that will answer your questions and hopefully bring some great insight into the question of solicitations and support during these very difficult times. This is a live forum for those who haven't joined us before. We have an opening topic that we spend typically 20-25 minutes on, and then we will open it up for whatever all of you want to discuss. This is supposed to be a virtual brainstorm, so whatever you want to talk about, we're here to chat. We've got our panel of Steier Group experts available as well. For those who haven't been here before, we do have some very easy ground rules. Everyone who is involved is on mute. So if you do want to talk or have a question, comment, please put it in that chat function at the bottom of your screen. Brian Norton, my colleague, will be monitoring those throughout. We will get to your questions, and if you do have something that you'd like to say, you will have to unmute yourself. As we always do, we want to start with a prayer to kind of set the tone for today. So if you would indulge me, in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Loving God, I pray that you will comfort our world and its suffering, lend skill to the hands of healers, and bless the means used for a cure. Give us confidence in the power of your grace, and even when we are afraid, we may put our whole trust in you. We ask all of this through our Savior, Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit. Amen. Again, thank you, everyone, for joining us. We're very excited about today's session, Donor Diagnosis. We're basically in week 7 of this pandemic, at least the major restrictions and shutdowns that were put in place, particularly with churches and schools, who are the bulk of the folks who are joining us on this call. Here in Omaha, Nebraska, May 4th is a big date. They are allowing worship facilities to open in a limited role with social distancing and other restrictions enforced, but we're at least starting to see light at the end of the tunnel when we may be able to congregate again. Not exactly sure how that's going to roll out or what sort of participation that there will be, but we do know in the meantime that much of what we're doing as development professionals will continue to be virtually, by phone, by digital, and we're all trying to figure out the best way to navigate that. So what better way, we thought, than to actually bring on some folks who are in the midst of that fundraising all the time, being asked for support, to get their opinion. So I want to introduce our panel of experts. We start with Erin Swanson-Russell. Erin is the Vice President of Community Giving for the Hyder Family Foundation. The Hyder Foundation supports projects in Nebraska, Iowa, California, Colorado, and Kentucky. Their causes focus on Catholic institutions, Jesuit institutions, educational concerns, the arts, the at-risk population, and children. Erin has 20 plus years of mission advancement experience, including serving in roles as a frontline fundraiser for Creighton University and Goodwill Industries. Erin, thank you so much for joining us today. We also have Paul Bolus with us. Paul is a partner with Bradley Law Firm in Birmingham, Alabama. Paul is a member of St. Elias Maronite Catholic Church. He has supported and served in leadership positions with the United Way of Alabama, Birmingham Southern College, Tulane University, Vanderbilt University, the Maronite Catholic Foundation, where he is the co-chair of their national campaign, Children's Hospital of Alabama, and Birmingham Children's Theater. Paul, thank you so much for joining us from Alabama. We also have Sean and Karen Miller with us. They are from the Kansas City area. Sean is the chairman and CEO of the Robert E. Miller Group, an insurance and benefits broker. They are members of St. Peter's Catholic Church in Kansas City, and they have served and support causes like Homes for the Heart and his Work Foundation. They do charitable work in Central America and Africa. Also, St. Paul's Outreach, which is a college missionary organization, the Catholic Community Foundation of Kansas City St. Joe's, and Good Life Innovations. John and Karen, thank you both for joining us today. And finally, Matt Darling. Matt is the Executive Vice President of the Omaha Community Foundation. OCF has 1,800 donors serving the needs of more than 3,000 nonprofit organizations. They, in 2019 alone, handed out $165 million worth of grants. And since their inception in 1982, have granted $1.8 billion. That ranks in the top 3% of per capita giving for community foundations nationwide. Matt, thank you so much for joining. And I do want to start out with Matt, if we can, kind of from a broad level as you see community giving and a lot of donor activity. What has been the change of behavior in the past 7 weeks, maybe compared to what you saw January, February, or any other kind of standard first quarter of the year?
That's a big question. Big question. The change has been incredible. What you've seen is the 1,800 donors that we serve, the majority of them, their assets contained within OCF go down by in the neighborhood of 15 to 20%. That was what happened first. Then needs started crystallizing. Understanding what this pandemic meant has been incredibly difficult because, as we all know, there is no timeline. This is not a tornado ripping through our town. This is not a flood. This is something that has no end in sight. So our donors have really struggled in trying to figure out when to start pushing money out. Naturally, they want to wait for the market to come back, but that hasn't been an option. So in Omaha, we have seen not only a significant asset contraction or reduction, but also a great push in our donors pushing those funds out for immediate needs. One of the biggest concerns with the funds or with the donors has been for them to try to decipher those organizations that are able to serve frontline needs versus those that are concerned about their own operating expenses and costs. Because of course, every nonprofit is getting hit right now. Doesn't make one more worthy than the other, but it does resonate differently with donors. Beyond that, we're seeing for the first time I've been at OCF for almost 7 years, the first time ever has been, this is not probably gonna be the best of news in this group, but stepping back from capital projects and really looking at what are the service industries that are serving, again, people that have immediate needs: rental assistance, housing assistance, food, immediate assistance to do the day-to-day. So what I have seen overall is a donor that's proactively searching for information to guide their giving, because the inundation of requests and needs, as showcased by each of the individual nonprofits, of which there are 3,400 in the Omaha metro area alone, has been confusing to donors. Does that answer your question, Sean?
Yeah, absolutely. And Aaron, is that consistent with what you are doing at the Hyder Foundation? Are you really concentrating your efforts on that kind of health and human services toward types of organizations?
To an extent, the way we approach our philanthropy is we want to have a really narrow moat. So a smaller number of nonprofits, but we go pretty deep into those nonprofits. So the organizations that we're the most affiliated with or have known the longest, we are really watching their operational needs right now. And it can get kind of complicated at times. So the Boys and Girls Club of the Midlands is a huge beneficiary of our funds, but another one that's even a bigger monster is Creighton University. And with the educational climate, people aren't quite sure what the fall looks like. And right now, Creighton is predicting a 20% decrease in freshman enrollment. So what does that exactly do for them financially? And, we're seeing information now that kids are maybe going to take a gap year. And it's not even just a financial issue, it's a safety issue. Because as Matt talked about, there's no definitive timeline and there's no vaccine close in sight or truly a treatment that's definitive too. So we're doing as best we can with organizations that we're very involved with to watch them operationally to see how we can help. We're also doing some with basic food needs. That's kind of been the area we've been focused on the most, but also focused on operations of our most quality relationships that we have.
And I would maybe open it up to the entire group. Are you still consistently supporting the longtime partnerships that you have had and always kind of cultivated? Or are you looking at new organizations that you're trying to support because of their missions and how they're dealing with the crisis of human service?
I'll go. This is Paul Bolus. So for me, it has been really because the charities that I support are near and dear to my heart, and many are suffering at this time. It's been a time to try to give even more in ways that I can. I think what Matt had to say about, you're seeing your portfolio go down, but at the same time, you're seeing the great need. And so it's a balancing of the two. But I think that those charities, Birmingham Children's Theater, who is fighting for its existence, literally is something that I am supporting and will continue to support and encouraging others to support, because if they don't make it through this, they literally, a 75-year-old institution is going to fold shop and may never come back. And so, that's near and dear. Obviously, the church that I'm a lifelong member of is very near and dear to my heart, and trying to make sure that it stays in good stead during this time. I would agree, capital campaigns are going by the wayside, and it's a matter of making sure that the day-to-day functions and our staff is taken care of during this time, as well as being able to reach out to as many as we can in the community that we've always supported. So I think it's a time where people who can are redoubling their efforts to support the charities in the ways that they can. Because they're near and dear to their heart, and if you don't see them through this, they may not survive.
Sean, I think you had something that you were going to add there.
Yeah, so our giving is in kind of different buckets. So we give individually, we give as a corporation, and then we have a foundation that we give through too. And so I'm still the CEO of our corporation. So the first thing we're doing is making sure that our employees are safe and that they and their families are taken care of. We established a benevolence fund years ago for them, so we're encouraging them to access that. And honestly, we haven't had a lot of requests for grants at this point, because I think everybody got their government check, and so there's a period of time where a lot of people are perhaps okay. One of the things that our business does, we have a practice that insures not-for-profits. So we insure more nonprofits than anybody in Kansas City. So we've been reaching out. Most of them are social service agencies, and they're very busy. I mean, it's not like their business has dropped off and their revenues have gone down. They're very busy. I think long-term funding, if they're funded by the state, which many of them are, is going to be a challenge. But right now, their needs are, we look for really specific needs, like needs of our employees and their families. We've given money, and we did that at our church. They established a relief fund for, we've got a soup pantry. What did they call it? We have a food pantry, and also they needed scholarship money for the families to get their kids through the school. We have a big school at our church as well. So we actually made a pretty good grant to get that established. And then in terms of working with the nonprofits in the Kansas City area, I would agree. I mean, if you've got a capital campaign, it's probably on hold right now, but there's a lot of individual needs. One of the things that they're really struggling with is to get protective equipment. So we found a source that could provide masks, and believe it or not, that's the biggest hit for them in terms of our giving, at least of late. So we're looking for really specific needs, and we're not looking for new people to give to. That was back to your question originally. And I would say too, it seems to me like my requests have gone down a lot since all of this happened. So, and you guys are all in different positions than I'm in, but I'm not getting as many requests. And I think it's probably a good time for people to reach out to their good donors in a very personal way, with a phone call. I know we can't do a lot of visits, but these Zoom calls are okay, phone calls, even text messages, whatever's the best way to get in touch with them and share with them how you're dealing with it and what your specific needs are.
And Sean, what you're touching on there is probably the number one question on everyone's mind is it okay to ask. So kind of a two-part question for everyone there. First of all, we're dealing mostly with churches and schools, dioceses, Newman centers that aren't on that grid of, necessarily direct human relief or food insecurity, those sorts of things. So I think there is some sort of hesitancy. Can they be out asking at the same time as those other nonprofits who are delivering critical services right now? So can they ask? And just as you mentioned, Sean, are you getting requests, and is it appropriate to be approaching you at this?
I'll jump in. I think not only is it appropriate, and I don't know if I would say ask. I think it's really important to stay in touch with your key donors and to tell them how you're doing. We actually, one of the foundations that you have there, Homes from the Heart, we build homes in El Salvador and Haiti, and the supply chain's been disrupted worldwide. So our people in Haiti can't get food. And so he's doing different food drives and everything. And I just kind of sent an email out to one of our donors and said, hey, here's what Jimmy's doing down in Haiti right now. And they said, okay, that's awesome. And they sent me a big check. So and this is probably an old adage to you guys, but I've always heard that if you want a donation, you ask for advice. So, and if you want advice, you ask for a donation. So this is kind of the time to go and say, here's what we're doing to kind of sustain our organization long term. And here's some of our needs. And, we appreciate your past support. And I think you'd be surprised. Some of the online events that I've seen that have transitioned to online have actually raised more money than they did in person in years past. Now, I don't think you could do this every single year forever, but right now, at least, I've attended 3 online fundraisers, and all of them have just blown through anything they've ever done in the past. So,
Aaron, I'd like to bring you in on that topic. Obviously, serving as a foundation, that is your job to take requests, constantly. Are you seeing that constant stream of requests still? And is it okay to be reaching out to major family foundations to ask for support?
Sure. I would agree with Sean that we've actually seen a little bit of a slowdown. We are getting updates. Some of them are blast emails that are clearly going not specifically just to myself, where in those situations, depending on the level that we're contributing at that organization, I would encourage people to pick up the phone and make a call at this point. But I think communication is critical. You want to be pleasantly persistent just to let people know what you're doing. But, we are open to a request at this point. So, there were people I met with literally a week or 10 days before all of this really started to get real here in the Midwest, who were supposed to follow up with me within like 2 weeks, and I've heard nothing from. And to me, that makes me cringe, because it's okay to call. Like, I'm completely open to a conversation. We're open to a conversation. We just want to know what you're doing. Don't inundate us like every day with updates, but every other week or so, letting us know what's going on with your organization and how you are helping the people that you serve or living your mission is the best thing you can do right now. Before I working with the Hiders, I worked at Goodwill, and we went through a major crisis about 3-4 years ago. And critical in the newspaper, it was terrible. And one of the things that we got feedback on was, you can't, you guys weren't out enough to let us know what was going on. You didn't get out ahead of it, and it wasn't consistent communication enough to let us know what was going on. So I think if you are communicating pleasantly, persistent, not overdoing it, that's exactly what you need to be doing right now. And ask, have those discussions. We are open to those discussions. I think most people are at this point.
Does the current situation that we're in, obviously you all have commitments that you are still addressing from years or months past. Is it going to be more difficult to honor those obligations, and does it change how much or how willing you might be able to donate for the rest of 2020?
I'll respond to that one. We're in a good position right now. Scott Hyder, who is the head of our foundation, he's actually chairing a capital campaign right now. So we are committing that commitment. And every other foundation that I've talked to in Omaha right now who has made commitments earlier on in this year is making good on those commitments. The timing of the actual cash hitting the bank account might be a little bit different, but it's important for us to continue to give. We're in a position where we can help, and we're going to help.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just saying, what I see from the family foundations that we specifically manage is exactly the same as what Aaron just said. The one caveat that I am seeing a fair amount of is now they are talking about what they are going to do next year. And so all commitments, everything, they're going to stick to it, not a problem at all. But I would anticipate that commitments and dollar amounts going out are going to be lessened next year.
And maybe let's talk about those finances a little bit without anyone getting specific in terms of their portfolio. But as you look at your outlook of what you have, is there any sort of markers that you're looking at that might be, a milestone or a positive sign that would allow you to gain confidence and really feel like you could be donating at previous levels?
So our foundation, again, we're different than the other givers here. We're a public foundation. We represent a large number of donors, but we lost about $250 million of assets in 3 weeks. And that hit some people really hard. So when you look at markers, every individual has their own markers. They all have their own plan. I am working with a family that went from a $200 million fund to 158, and talking to them about what their giving looks like. They spend 5%, so it's about a $10 million a year grant model. They're hoping to get back up to around 180 or so. So, I mean, I think it's recovering half of what they've lost in total. And today's a good day in the market, but the unknowingness still around what's happening is just going to provide a unique situation enough that people are just going to continue to hold back, I believe. Again, I'm looking in mass, and I don't have a specific portfolio, just one that we manage or work for.
I want to ask just a couple of questions on stewardship, and this, Paul, I'm going to take at least the first crack to you here, because you had mentioned it a little bit earlier. The notion of stewardship, and at its core, it's giving back all the blessings that you have received. It seems as if sometimes there's a misnomer that stewardship is only applicable in the good times. But as you mentioned, it probably is more critical in bad times like we're currently facing.
Yes, I would agree with that. And I do think that when you have people who are very committed to their individual church or individual charity, that even though they may be hurting as far as their portfolio goes, they understand the crucial time it is, for you. And I would say at our church in particular, our overall number of givers has gone down since this. I mean, obviously we're not participating in church. We can't pass the plate, so to speak, or the basket. And so, some of that has gone, but we've had a few people who have just stepped forward and given more without really even a specific ask. And one of the things I think that's so important, and I know everybody knows this, but sometimes you just forget, is acknowledging someone specifically and personally when they do give an extraordinary donation, especially during this time. We had a parishioner who his wife is a member of the Baptist church. He's a member of our church, at the Catholic church, and has been a long time. And they gave an equal amount to two churches. They said, we know both churches are hurting, and so we're going to do this. And they just did it. And they didn't tell anybody they were doing it. They just sent it in. Well, the Baptist church reached out, and 3 different people called and thanked them for their donation. And our church, the donation sat on the desk of the pastor and was not even opened for over a week. And they got nothing from us because no one even knew that it was there. And it became a problem for us. I mean, it got back to me personally how upset they were that they had not heard from us at all. So I do think you need to be in tune with that and make sure that you acknowledge and reach out to those who can give, because those who can during this time will. There are some that can't, but there are some that will, and they're willing to give more, I believe.
John and Karen, anything to add to that, and just kind of your viewpoint on, the future health of your parish, the Catholic Church, how this might all impact that?
We're kind of in an interesting situation. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Dynamic Parish program that Dynamic Catholic established. So they're doing that in Kansas City, Missouri, and our parish is a dynamic parish. So we're working with Dynamic Catholic. So when all of this hit, they kind of talked with us a lot about, okay, they're meeting with us every single week on what do we do to go, to broadcast our services, to send messages out, to stay connected with the parish. But even with that, and I was on a call with them yesterday, I've been watching our numbers in terms of mass attendance, and it's dropped. We're way less than 50% of where we were. The fourth Sunday of Lent was the first week that we broadcast Mass. And we are less than 50% of where we were then. And I was asking the guy at Dynamic Catholic about that. I said, is this, to me, that's an alarming trend. As a business guy, I'm looking at, every single week it's kind of coming down. And he said, even like, Bishop Barron and some of the people that you would think everybody's watching, theirs has even gone down almost 50% too. And of course, you come through Lent and after Easter, there's a natural drop off, sadly, with Catholics and Mass. But, I think the sad thing, I think, for parishes is there's a lot of people that are kind of on the fence, about their faith. And they may not come back. Those are the people that might have been going to church out of obligation. I'm not sure they're going to come back. I don't know what it's going to look like when we go back. We are blessed that we've done a lot of direct giving from direct deposit. So over 80% of our donations every week go direct. So if you're a parish that's dependent upon the plate that's passed around, it's got to be very, very difficult. We were fortunate in that regard. So I don't know if you have any other comments.
Well, I think a lot depends on what happens. People are going to wait and see. This first phase is going to take place, and I think a lot of people are going to wait and see how that goes, so to speak, and how willing people are to start going out and doing things, and just opening up and being willing to attend events or be more social with other people. And I think if that kind of goes well and people start getting more comfortable doing that, and it starts increasing, I think that will be reflected in what people do as far as their giving as well. So
under any circumstance, the push towards digital giving and online platforms continues to be very important. In terms of some of that promotional activity, maybe we could start with you, Matt. Should nonprofits be marketing certain aspects of, let's say, the CARES Act or donor advised funds? Is there anything that you look at as kind of an opportunity to hone in on as a kind of a potential good spot for funding or donations?
Right now in this time, and to answer a question, Sean, that you had earlier that I didn't get a chance to answer about new organizations, is what we've seen. Again, community foundations are different. We amass information and distribute as requested by donors. So it's not, we're not a vetting process, but what we are seeing is organizations and that are really stepping up in a different and unique way. And in working with some of our largest donors and our teams, that's what we focus on the most. Who's stepping up and trying to solve problems? Who is in survival mode? Survival mode is okay. I mean, we aren't disparaging that, but getting that separation, I think the CARES Act, it's fine. There's a lot of information out there. I think focusing on that organization's mission and impact is going to be what draws a donor 9.9 times out of 10. There's expectation that nonprofits follow the payroll protection PPP. I forget what the third P is, but the PPP, so that they can get the assistance. Donors have pushed on us to make sure that they are taking advantage of the system in place, but that the donors are responsible for bridging any gaps that may exist. And when an organization is doing great work, new work, maybe for themselves to solve their own crisis, but also the crisis in the community as a whole, I'm seeing donors that are just giving big chunks to organizations that they never have because of what they're stepping up to do.
And Matt, this might be a difficult follow-up question, and other panelists feel free to chime in, but if you're a church or a school, what can you be doing to kind of scratch that itch in terms of being innovative and solving a problem, that's kind of more in a standard or church setting?
Sure. A good example of that, and this is a little bit of a one-off from a direct church, but there's an organization in town that's closely affiliated with the church. And I have some donors that are high net worth donors that are not church goers. And one of their friends conveyed to them the community work that the church is doing around their food pantry development and how they are truly targeting an audience in which they didn't target before, and they're being proactive about getting food into hands of individuals that really need it. And this donor gave them $20,000 just because they felt like they were doing a really good service in the community. So that came from a networking standpoint. I think it came from a little bit of social media from this particular organization, but it absolutely enticed a new donor to give to that organization. Now, there's not longevity in that donor's relationship as this need disappears, hopefully soon. The religious aspect won't keep that donor engaged. But I don't know, I mean, just getting the information out there is what I'm seeing as being the most effective way.
Brian Norton, I'd like to, go ahead, Aaron.
Comment on that. So, this isn't us directly, but it's an organization, two organizations that we're somewhat affiliated with. But so we're pretty philanthropic with the Boys and Girls Club, as I mentioned earlier. So in regards to the schools, though, kids are out, they're doing this digital virtual learning. Omaha Public Schools is a district here in town that is really struggling, I think, to connect with their students. And so the clubs had 600 laptops, tablets just sitting around collecting dust. And they made a decision to donate $250,000 worth of their technology equipment to their club kids who are OPS kids so that they can continue to have a digital learning environment. And then the clubs has a board member that's Cox Communications and set up all of those households with 2 free months of Wi-Fi for free. And so, clubs is a great partner with OPS. And so we saw that as a huge win. The collaboration piece, if you can do that and find a way to collaborate, again, OPS is a district that's, I think, got, Matt, maybe help me out, 70% free and reduced lunch numbers. It's a demographic that really struggles and struggling even more now with COVID-19.
Excellent. Brian Norton, I just want to ask you real quick for potential questions on the line with any of our participants.
Yes, we've got a couple questions here. I guess the first one is wondering how the donors feel about how they would be receptive to a phone solicitation versus an in-person request. Obviously, right now, phone is probably the best bet without being able to meet in person. So they were just wondering about that.
Sean, I think you had mentioned that earlier in terms of it doesn't necessarily need to be a personal follow-up. Anyone on our panel want to expand on that? Is a phone call solicitation appropriate now, whereas in previous times it may not have been?
I think absolutely. Yeah, I would say it's it's all we've got. A phone, if you could do a Zoom with somebody, that's wonderful, but a phone call is great. I mean, that's what we did with our sales team in my business. We said, just get on the phone and start talking to everybody and see how they're doing and what we can do to help them out. So I think phone is probably the best way to do it.
Any other questions there, Brian?
Yeah, we've got one more here. It's talking about, and Matt sort of alluded to the fact that 2021 may see giving go down. And this question is, would it make sense to make a strong push now and into the summer, kind of as things start to open up a bit more, maybe to get in before, a delay maybe in the autumn if there's another wave, or, obviously if giving goes down in 2021.
Oh, Matt, maybe you can address that in terms of trends moving to the end of the year and into 2021. Is there any reason to get a solicitation or a request out sooner rather than later?
Yeah, my answer is going to be, I don't know. I don't have a good idea, just because we can't see what's going to happen in the future. Assuming that there's no vaccine until 21, and assuming we get locked down again in the fall or winter, people want to capitalize, on right now. I mean, that could be the case, but I just don't know. I mean, I think that there's a lot of people I'm talking to that commitments are going to be staying with the organization, like Aaron had said, staying with the organizations that they've supported for so long and helping those frontline people, the healthcare workers, the individuals that are going to potentially lose homes after government support's gone. That's where the concern is. And if it's a new request, I would just exercise caution if it's not tied to the immediate needs or services of an organization which that person is passionate about, or the community. That doesn't really answer your question. I'm sorry.
Hey, Sean. So one thing I would say, not specifically us, like I said, we're giving, but there is a foundation here in Omaha that I know is actually accelerating their annual giving this year to all of their nonprofits. And in some cases, they are doing more than they have in the past, knowing that there's a lot of unknowns right now. This was even before PPP was really kind of going. There are also some foundations who are holding and waiting to see who's applying for PPP, who's getting it, who's being a good steward of those dollars, and then coming together this summer to evaluate. Really interesting. And we were on the phone this morning with another major philanthropist here in town who sits on 3 foundation boards. And he even said, it's going to be a long time before I go to a 900 seat, all of my 900 best friends event for a nonprofit. So I think that people need to start strategically thinking about the events-based part of their organization, because people are not going to be running out to go to those things. And if you're seeing success with the digital and virtual events, that's great. What can you do moving forward? But I think it's going to be a while before we see that normal return. And when that normal returns, will people even want to do that? I think people like the freedom that they've had now to kind of, hey, we can focus and do some of the things we want to do with our families. But I don't think we'll ever go back to where we were before. That's just my opinion.
On that same sort of topic, to any of you, is there something that you envision won't change or will change moving forward? I should say will change in terms of your habits, how you support what you do. Is there some sort of sea change that you see coming?
One thing I've seen is that will not change, and I think will only grow, is the need and the expectation of philanthropy. I think there's more people through this this pandemic that they've taken such ownership of being a philanthropist and giving money to communities and being so proud to be able and privileged to be able to do that, that I think this will increase the number of philanthropists that we have in our community, and it will also provide more focus. Unfortunately, it will also reduce the number of nonprofits in every community. I think there's 1.4 million of them in our country, and they will be reduced. And some might say that that's not a bad thing. Some might say that it is a bad thing. I'm not going to be the judge of that. We have a fund at our community foundation that a donor just recently dropped a fairly large amount of money into. The sole purpose of the fund is called the Charity Efficiency Fund. It's to provide dollars to organizations that are merging. So in this time of need, when they don't have money to spend on accountants and attorneys and things of that sort, this fund will underwrite all of those expenses for any nonprofit that is going to merge with another one to create efficiencies both in the marketplace, but also to save the cause that they're after. So kind of an unusual thing.
Yeah, very interesting. I just want to put everyone on alert here that I'm going to ask you for a kind of a final word from each of the four of you. But before we do that, Brian, any other questions on the line, or is there anyone who would like to ask a specific question of our panel?
Yeah, we have one. It says, for the Millers, has Dynamic Catholic made any suggestion about retaining such build engagement of parishioners, such as a parish pushing information, creating opportunities for parishioners to engage in some form of outreach, etc.?
Yeah, they've encouraged us. I mean, one of the things that we've done, and I think a lot of parishes have done this, is we got a group of volunteers together, and we've called every single member of the parish with particular, just to see how they're doing and to see if there's anything that the parish can do to help them out. We do weekly e-blasts that include a lot of information. And so, and it's kind of nice because we get every week, the consultant that works with us sends us kind of, here's some great stuff that some of the parishes, I think they've got, how many, 80 parishes maybe across the country in this program right now. So they'll share what other parishes have been doing, and then we can do that. So they're providing us with a lot of help there. And then our pastor is doing a weekly message. And then we're doing mass. I think they're doing daily mass now, or most days daily mass, and then Sunday mass. They do it. We don't live stream it though. We do it on YouTube, which I personally like better because I can go to mass. We can go to mass whenever we want. So we've gone to mass at 9 o'clock on Sunday night, and we've gone to mass on Saturday afternoon. And so it's kind of nice in that regard. And it also gives them a chance to edit, and it looks really good. That being said, and we talked about this yesterday, the quality of a Catholic mass that's broadcast is not even close to what some of these evangelical megachurches have done, because those guys have got it dialed in. I mean, it's a production that they put out, and so that's where I think we do lose a little bit. I hope we don't lose people long term to that when they can finally start coming back. So,
any other questions, Brian?
Yes, yeah, we have one more. For those organizations that are in the middle of a capital campaign, how can those efforts be redirected to being steward donors and bolster support for immediate needs?
Aaron, I don't know, do you have anyone in that sort of position that's in the midst of campaign and trying to switch gears right in the middle?
I would say the campaign that we're charging right now somewhat falls into that category. I will say we're about 90% of the way there. So the last 10% is what we have to raise. But, we have made a concerted effort to reach out to the folks that have contributed to the campaign, let them know where we're at to date, what's happening or what has happened in the last 30 days, and, what our strategy is moving forward. And, that organization is, it's an arts organization. And so it's interesting because they've had to cancel over 350 performances and practices, rehearsals. And I think 200 of them are actual performances. So it's close to 3.2 million in revenue. So, having discussions then about, it's a very strong organization, but what does that look like for them operationally moving forward? And they did apply for PPP funding, but I think it's an opportunity for them, a lot of uncertainty. And quite honestly, depending on how long this goes, arts will probably be the last thing that comes back, because this is America. Everybody loves football and baseball, and sports will be the first thing that comes back, and the arts will be the last thing that comes back. But it's, having those discussions. Here's our plan. This is what we're at. And here is our strategy moving forward.
And I know I could, any one of my Steier Group colleagues who wants to chime in on this, but I know that the advice that we're providing to our partners is not to operate from a position of fear and worrying about what won't happen. It is a time to be bold, and as we've heard today from folks, you should not be afraid to ask. And if you have true, urgent, real needs, you should not put those on the shelf because of the situation that we're in. It's not going to make your situation change moving forward. So if you do have those urgent needs, it is well within your rights to go out and ask for support for a very important mission that many people love and support. Anyone from the Steier Group want to chime in on that? Okay. Well, we are getting to about the 45-minute mark, so we do want to put a wrap on this. I would just ask if we could, Aaron, Matt, Sean, Karen, Paul, maybe just a final word, knowing that the folks on the line largely are pastors. They're folks who are working in churches, development directors, communications people for schools as well, Newman Centers, dioceses. Kind of what is your advice to those folks as they grapple with how to keep their organizations operationally sound? And I'll go ahead and start. Let's go ahead, but we'll put Matt on the spot. You started us, Matt. You can start the finishing round.
I knew you were going to put me on the spot there with the toughest question, John. How to keep the organizational fiscally sound right now? You know, I guess I would just say that I can't answer specifically to any one organization, but what I would say is that overall, and I'm not trying to minimize what is going on right now, but this is going to be a blip in the radar of life and the radar of philanthropy. I mean, this is a moment, and it's a tough moment, but we'll get through it. And I know that we hear that everywhere we go. And as I'd said in my previous comments, I believe philanthropy will come out stronger. Don't be afraid to ask. Just be cognizant of your needs and that you're asking for a need that measures up in this time, and being aware of the individuals of whom you're asking. They believe in you and you in them. So I think that, honestly, I have great confidence in how we're all coming through this.
Paul, I'm going to head down to Alabama, put you on the spot here.
Sure thing. I would say that you need to ask. You need to do it in the right way, knowing that not everyone can give at this time, but those who can give, I really believe will give, and will give in larger numbers if they can. And so as pastors, you should be in tune with who those key givers are, and you should reach out to them, and you should let them know what the need is and why. And I think you'll get the money that you need in the short term. The long term, I think it's hard to determine. I do worry that not everybody will come back. I think part of the problem of the declining of numbers, which Sean talked about, is not just the fact that, it's past Easter and Holy Week and all of that, but there are so many options now. And I know, talking to my own parishioners at our own church, they've gotten used now to watching other churches because they found it more dynamic, or they found it better, or whatever, or it's a priest that used to be at our church and is now somewhere else, but they can watch him and they liked him before, and so they like his homilies. So I think there's going to be some of that that's going to continue, because I think the big discussion, I know this is not for today, but one of the discussions, I mean, even in our own church, are we going to continue to live stream now forever? And I think a lot of churches may be in that situation. And so it's going to be competition. And so you best be in tune with your key members and your key givers, and ask them for the advice, and the money will come. And I say you need to do that more so now than ever. Do not be afraid. Do not stop. Go more than usual, not less. That would be my advice.
Love it. Thank you, Paul. Aaron, final word.
I echo both what Paul and Matt are saying. I think asking in a very mindful way, knowing your audience, knowing the things that are important to them, and they're, just understanding your donors, and communication. I mean, to me, if we're not hearing from you, that's a huge red flag to me. I want you to be talking to me. I want you to be telling me, how is COVID-19 impacting you, and what are you doing right now in this time? So communicate with that audience and personalize it as best that you can, so that it doesn't feel like a blanket approach that you're just sending out a blast email to everybody, even your top donor. Just be mindful of that type of communication.
All right, Aaron, thank you. We'll head down to Kansas City. Sean and Karen, your final word.
Well, everybody's probably familiar with the Pareto principle, that 80% of your results comes from 20% of your efforts. And in this case, 80% of your donations probably come from 20%. And I think in the Catholic Church, it's more like 90-10. So just make sure that you're really in touch with that 10% that's really supporting your organization. and communicate with them. I think it's good to tell them what you're doing as a business too. So I'm on the board of St. Paul's Outreach, and we got the PPP, the SBA loan, and they shared that, with the board. But I think it's good to share that with your donors too, that, you're out there, and because if you're not getting, honestly, if you didn't apply for that and get the PPP funds, I'm worried about you as a business, as being seriously. I mean, every nonprofit, everybody on this call, our company got a grant like that. So you need to be showing people that your business acumen is solid and that you're doing well. And then if you've got specific needs, go ahead and ask for those too. But communication is just huge, and maintaining as best you can, maintaining your culture and your community as a parish too, as best you can, with whatever means you have at your disposal right now.
Sean, Karen, thank you. I think we've heard it loud and clear, folks, which is this is not a time not to be asking for support. It is absolutely a time to be reaching out to your major donors, your best supporters, and communicating what exactly your organization is doing and what sort of straits you're in. Even if those straits are a very bad story, there are people who want to help and are willing to help. There may be some who can't help, but there certainly are folks who will. So again, I would just like to pass along the greatest of appreciation to Paul down in Alabama, Sean and Karen down in Kansas City, and Matt and Aaron here in Omaha. Your insight was exactly what we're looking for. We appreciate your time and all of the input that you provided. So we will put a wrap on this week's Stewardship Development and Fundraising Forum. If you would like to pass this along to anyone, we will post it on our YouTube website, and we'll get information out for that as well. Just a quick little plug here for those of you who have been accessing our resources for Easter season. We do have the latest version of that. Brian's bringing it up right now, our Easter season from home. It is week 4. This is something that you can distribute in your parishes or your schools. We do have it in English and in Spanish. This is free of charge. So please take advantage. If you would like that and aren't on the list to get it, just drop me an email. And as always, if you have questions, if you have suggestions for a future forum, if you would like to follow up, if you would like us to talk to you about your specific situation with your organization, please don't hesitate to reach out. You see my email there, smcmann@steiergroup.com. We are here to help. Week 7 of the pandemic. We hope that these sessions are helpful, and we hope that your organizations, your families are as best as they can be, staying safe and staying well. So for all of us here at the Steier Group, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on our next web forum. Have a great day.